Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, welcome to the show. This is the Millennial Millionaire podcast, and I am your host, Stephen Cohen. This podcast is focused on bringing some of the wisest minds from across the globe to discuss concepts, strategies, and ideals that will lead them to be top performers in their respective industries and their lives. This show is for the millennials and millennials at heart to transcend their mindset, their health, and their income to the next level. We are so excited to have you on this journey with us. Welcome to the show. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome back. We have a special guest today, a good buddy of mine, ex-fraternity brother. Well, I guess not ex, fraternity for life. Mr. Gershon Levy. Gershon is currently a realtor out here in Las Vegas with Allison James Estates and Home. He holds a broker salesperson's license. Earlier this year, Gershon was ranked as the top producing agent for his brokerage in the state of Nevada. He is a native son of Las Vegas and attended UNLV, where he graduated a degree in finance. Gershon is also a master at TikTok and social media marketing with over millions of views on TikTok, and just super excited to have a brother in on the show, man. Thanks for coming in finally.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. So we've known each other for a really long time, over a decade, and it's been super cool, you know, when it comes to our fraternity brothers, to see kind of where people end up in the growth and really just the trajectory after college. Some people end up using their degree. Some people, you know, just go to all these different kinds of industries. I know real estate has been really big for you, your main focus the last 3-4 years. What really got you into real estate after college, and what was that transition like?
Yeah, definitely. So real estate wasn't the first thing that I was trying to go after school. I actually started working with my cousin and a few of the other brothers. What we were doing was we did business consulting. So companies that were looking for extra capital would come to us that couldn't get bank financing. And this was like 2012, 2013. So it was very difficult back then still after the recession to get money. So I did that for about 7 years actually. And that grew pretty well, but it wasn't that I didn't like it. I kind of wanted something new, that I really controlled myself, that there was, no cap on income, that there was no, I guess no boss. I really wanted to create something on my own. And the year before the pandemic happened, I started talking to my dad about real estate, because he's always pushed me to do something with real estate business. And, I was like, why don't I just get my license and see what happens? And it was actually really fortunate, because I got my license in 2019, and then everything happened with the pandemic the year after. The business that I was in started winding down because, everyone's at home. People weren't really opening businesses up. So real estate was there for me. And by that time, I was already 6 or 7 months into it. And I just kind of took off with it. So it became what I look at now as my future career. I love it so much, honestly.
Yeah, man, it's pretty cool, because I remember when you first got, into real estate, like you said, in 2019, I was like, oh, that's cool. He's making a shift from finance, because I know that was kind of what your degree was in. What was that transition like? Because I feel like a lot of people that go to college, they major in a certain degree, or, they have these plans for after college. And a lot of times, it doesn't end up the way that they hoped, or sometimes they kind of get stuck in a career or a space or an industry that they don't necessarily love, and they're scared to make that transition. Was that something you were, kind of intimidated by, because you spent so much time in college to make a transition over to, real estate and direct sales? Or is it something that kind of came natural to you?
Honestly, it came naturally to me, because the degree I had, I didn't need it to get the job I had, right? Because the job was still a lot of sales, right? You have to figure out how to work with companies and figure out what they actually need. It's a lot of person-to-person interaction. And through that, there was, you need to have some sort of financial literacy, but I didn't need a degree to get that job. The funny thing is, I got a finance degree at UNLV. When I applied for my real estate license, they said, if you went to college and you had a degree, you only need to take 3 or 4 more classes and you can get a license that's higher than a regular salesperson license. So I don't know if you know, but in normal real estate, the way that it works is, if you get your basic degree, you're called a salesperson here in Nevada. And then if you take a certain number of college credit courses, and if you have a degree and you take some other type of broker classes, you can become what's called a broker salesperson. And that's not to mean you're an actual broker with responsibilities on you, but it's just considered a higher designation. And then above that's the actual broker that runs everything like that. So even though I didn't use my degree to do my finance job right after college, that degree helped me get a higher designation when I went to real estate. So it was actually pretty seamless.
That's awesome, man. So you joined, I feel like, at a very unique time, the industry, right before the pandemic, things got a little bit crazy. I think I remember reading a stat a couple of years ago that at one point there was more realtors than houses on the market.
Yeah.
How do you feel like you separated yourself during that competitive time where I feel like a lot of realtors who maybe started around your time that you started aren't necessarily even in the space anymore? What separated you?
Yeah, honestly, there was so many people joining in 2020 when the pandemic hit, because it's a job you could do from home, and the market itself was heating up due to low rates. So when I saw that, I was like, I got to do something that sets me apart a little bit. So I started producing content, because I actually started seeing, I'm sure you've heard of Ryan Pineda in town.
Yeah.
And I started seeing his videos. And one thing that he was talking about was, I'm building a channel because even if I don't do real estate or things in the future, at least you build an audience. And I love that idea to build an audience, to grow it, to use it for this, and to parlay it for other things in the future. So I was like, what do I want my main focus to be? And I was like, I want it to be education, because I feel like when you talk to people just in general about real estate, they know like 3 or 4 words. They don't really understand what's going on. They know you should buy a house. They understand what a purchase price is, but like half the people you talk to don't even know what equity is, or don't know what the impact of rising interest rates or falling interest rates is. So I'm like, I have to educate. And that was really what I went on. So I was like, I'm going to start putting out things about real estate, about the market, as opposed to just putting more salesy content out that's like, if you're looking to buy, come talk to me. Like, I want you to watch this stuff and be like, I want to work with that guy, because if you give out value, people will come back to you.
Totally. And I think that's a big nug for people listening, especially, whether you're in real estate or any type of industry. One way to separate yourself is just to add value without expecting anything in return. Giving out information, free route, free value, good content, the same thing that we're doing right now is going to attract people who are curious about that. And chances are they're going to reach out and, one, want to do business with you because you're already adding free value, but 2, you're able to add them to that book of business that you're developing. How was your real estate trajectory? Like in terms of starting your book of business, did you get most of your clients from social media, or were you working warm market, or what did that look like?
So when I first started, what most veteran realtors, brokers will tell you is that you really want to hit your SOI, your sphere of influence. I mean, that's for any type of job where you're working directly with clients one-on-one, because these people already have a level of trust and respect with you. Now, anybody that sees you become an agent, they're going to want to see you be an agent for a little bit, and it's not just a fly-by-night thing. But I really attacked my sphere of influence. I started doing letter writing. That's a big thing that some new agents should try doing, where basically you become an agent and you write personal handwritten notes to people around you that you trust, that have means that you want to work with in the future. Because when was the last time you got a handwritten note from anybody?
Never.
It's rare, right? And you'll read a lot of real estate books. They'll tell you that's a smart thing to do. I started doing the videos. I started posting on social media generally. And one wrinkle that I did was like, I've always liked telling jokes. I've always liked being funny. I started doing some real estate comedy, because I was like, I feel like people don't do, there's a lot of lighthearted things in real estate that are funny to me, at least. And I wanted to parlay that and show other people that. So it was a combo of attacking SOI, a sphere of influence, and also creating things that made people think and laugh.
I love that, man. How important was brand in terms of developing your real estate business?
Brand is super important. When people, if you think about it like this, buying or selling a house, this is one of the most expensive transactions that you'll ever be in your lifetime for most people. So if you're creating a brand for people to trust you with their hard-earned money or with their hard-earned assets, it has to be professional, respectful, but also I feel like realistic and down to earth. I feel like sometimes you look at certain realtors' pages and what they post, and it's just too aloof. It's too it doesn't seem real. It feels like you're watching some very, very rich type of person that cannot connect with just everyday people looking for a regular condo or townhouse. So for me, it was to be, educating people, but also making sure that I felt down to earth and approachable and real to people.
Yeah, no, totally, man. I feel like, in today's age where there's so much marketing, there's so much noise, there's so many things trying to sell you on a consistent basis, whether it's products, services, mentorship, coaching. The way that you cut through that is just true authenticity and just being a person. In my industry, it's door to door, different sales than what you do, but similar in a sense. It's like your goal is to create that relationship and break down their wall as fast as possible to create trust. And, I feel like in any type of sales business, trust is the key, especially in real estate where it's such a big purchase, to your point, where biggest purchases of most people's lives. What do you feel like, what attributes contributed to your success early on in real estate that either you cultivated over time or something that you learned through the process of selling?
So that's a great question. One thing that I always say is that I'm relentless. If I want something or I want to achieve something, I'm not going to stop until I achieve it. And I think with producing content, reaching out to SOI, sphere of influence, you have to keep on doing it, right? It's almost what's the term I'm looking for? It's compounding interest. There we go. It's compounding interest. You have to do it consistently. When you're working your sphere of influence, trying to get new clients, trying to build a business, right? You have to think about it. Most people are not looking for a home or to sell a home, but eventually they will make that decision. And you want to be around them just enough so that when they decide to do that, they're going to think of you right away. It's called being top of mind. So part of that requires you to be relentless in keeping up with posting on social media, reaching out to them, doing all the things that are necessary for you not to be annoying, but to be present when they make that decision and they'll go with you.
Yeah, man. Omnipresence, I think, is the term, just staying top of mind. So when the opportunity does present itself, out of the 100 realtors that they've probably been in contact with, whatever, you're definitely on the top of their mind. No, I love that for sure. Gershon, what do you think was one of the biggest reasons that you were attracted to, just real estate and sales and that whole demographic of entrepreneurship? Because I know for me, the time freedom and just really looking at what everyone else was doing in the marketplace really inspired me to do something different. What was that for you that drew you into a maybe more unorthodox industry?
So when I was younger, my dad he still is, but when I was younger, I remember my dad was a builder, contractor. So I've always been around homes, real estate, and it's always been an interest of mine, but it was never something that I thought I was going to, fall into. I always thought I wanted to be a lawyer, actually. Good Jewish boy.
Yeah.
But once I got older and I started seeing the real value of time and things like that, I was like, wow, I really want to have something where there's no cap on income, where I control my time and things like that. And for real estate, one thing about me, I love working with people one-on-one. Customer service is a skill of mine. I'm very good at having the self-awareness with clients, knowing what they need, knowing how to provide it. So I saw the potential with real estate based on, friends around me that were already in real estate. I had the background from, my dad being a builder and contractor and knowing a little bit about it already. And I was really ready to kind of, choose the thing that was going to make me my bones, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. What do you think separates a good realtor from maybe a not so good realtor and a bad realtor?
Oh, I love this question. This is a great question. Okay. So I actually think about this a lot. And the biggest thing that I can pinpoint is if you are a good realtor or a good real estate agent, you care more about the client being happy than you getting paid quickly. And I know that sounds, but I'll give you an example, right? So a lot of people you'll hear, they go see a realtor and the realtor finds a bunch of houses for them. They'll maybe go see 3, 5, 7 houses or whatever. And they feel like they have to make a decision after seeing just that many houses. Like the realtors have this system where they'll bring them, here's the ones you guys liked. Let's make an offer. With me, with good realtors, I feel like that's not what we do. I feel like it's more so you're problem solving. So some people are not ready right away to make an offer, and you have to get them there. And when they're ready, that's when you should move forward with it, because you don't want them to have buyer's remorse, because the key to growing a big business in my mind is being able to get referrals from past clients. And they're not going to do that if they felt rushed. They're not going to do that if they had buyer's remorse. So recognizing that you're there for their success, and that when they succeed in getting what they want, whether it be selling or buying, you'll make money off of that, right? That's a byproduct. So I guess shorting it up, I'm more process over profit.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, for everyone out there listening, in any business that you do, whenever you put your client, the customer first, that referral business is going to come naturally, because people feel that. People feel the energy. People feel, when it's a very transactional, and, you never want to do businesses with people like you feel like you've been taken advantage of, or you just didn't feel like you were in full control of the sale. And, I think we can all agree at the end of the day, the best type of business is referral business. And that's exactly the best compliment someone, can give you. I mean, firsthand with my house, Gershon, you sold me my first house, at least for myself. I had, one more home before that for my parents. But it was, I thought it was a great experience overall. But I thought what really impressed me in terms of your ability was when we were actually able to purchase, because, you know a little bit more than I did. Didn't this house have like 8 or 9 offers or something like that? We beat them all out.
Yeah, it was such an interesting story. I remember that day we found the house, called the guy, And he was like, can we set up a showing for maybe Sunday? Because I think it was Friday, and I was kind of busy. I wasn't sure I could make it. But he's like, look, I already have 8 offers. If you want to see, you should come today. So I was like, all right, let's go do this. So we came to the house, and we toured it. You guys loved it, obviously. And then by the time I went to go talk to him, he told me they already had 11 other offers. So we made our offer, and then we waited for the weekend to finish because they were going to decide on Monday, essentially. Once Monday came around, I called them and I said, hey, we put in an offer, and I don't know if you want me to speak numbers to explain the story, but the house was listed for $460,000, and with the way the market was going, the fact that there was 11 offers already, you knew you had to bid over list price, and plus it was a house with a pool, so those are very rare to find in Vegas at this time. So we made a 480 offer, which was pretty aggressive, and I called them. I was persistent with them. I was talking to them, and I said, look. Give me an idea of where we're at. Are we the highest offer? Are we the strongest offer? Because aside from the offering price, we put good terms in. We could close quickly. Our due diligence time for inspections was short. We weren't asking for a lot of things from them, et cetera. And he straight up looked at me. He said, "You're not the highest, but you're one of the strongest." So I was like, "I'm not the highest. Okay, well, what's the highest? Like, talk to me about it." He's like, I can't tell you that. I'm like, well, just tell me if the offer price for the highest offer is over 5. And he took a breath. Didn't say anything, so I was like, okay, so it's over 5. So I was like, who would offer at this time? And the funny thing is, if you bought your house a year later, it would have been normal, but at this time, the market was just ramping up. So somebody offering 10% over market was a little bit weird, and I was like, did this person even see the house? Did they just put a blind offer in to make sure that they could get in and then decide later? So I asked them, I said, look, I'm not trying to be too forward or blunt here, but I'm betting you right now that the person that offered over 5 has not seen the house yet. They put a blind bid in. It doesn't speak for 30 seconds. And then he goes, how did you know that? And I was like, well, because there's no chance that someone's just going to offer that much money, right? Without, between, so on the podcast, it's hard to explain, but between agents, something happens in real estate where people who are getting beat out for houses they want and are looking at a couple will just make ridiculous offers to be accepted into escrow. And then they'll kind of negotiate their way down during escrow. Some agents are open to doing that. Others aren't. I don't like doing that. But a lot of these people that are just looking for a place will make blind offers and they'll cancel later. So I told the guy, I'm like, look, the fact that this guy saw it blind, there's a good chance he's going to cancel the contract during escrow. My guy is 100% solid. He's going to close. Tell your seller that and get back to me. And we had an accepted offer an hour later.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. It just goes back to a good salesperson, a good representative, a good real estate versus someone who's maybe not as good. And it's just those little things and pushing a little bit more and just asking those right questions that will, determine whether or not you make the sale. And, it's been really interesting because over the last 3, 4, 5 years, I've really focused a lot more on real estate. On the investing side, obviously, right. I don't sell it, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, man, all these houses that we've purchased in the last 2 or 3 years, they've completely crushed it in terms of equity and in terms of helping my net worth. And, I look back and I'm like, man, what if I just waited another year or pulled the trigger? It just goes back to that quote. It's you don't want to wait to buy real estate. You want to buy real estate and wait.
I totally agree. Obviously, everyone's situation is different. Some people that have to wait because of financing issues or saving money or whatever. But I think one thing about the properties that you bought, we've always identified properties that have a chance of increasing in value, exponentially. You buy houses that have, great backyards, that, good square footage, right areas, all that kind of stuff. And you really set yourself up for success to be able to make equity down the line. So definitely, you've been killing it the last 2 years, definitely.
Yeah, it's been great, man. Let's talk a little bit about the investing side, because I think for a lot of people out there, a lot of young, hungry entrepreneurs, people in different industries and different spaces, they want to get into real estate, but I feel like there's big misconceptions. I feel like a lot of people think that, hey, if I don't have a real estate license, I can't invest. I can't, partake in this amazing investment opportunity. What advice or what expertise on the investing side can you add to the show?
Definitely. So real estate investing is really interesting because one thing I always remind people is that a majority of wealthy people made their money in real estate, right? Because it's one of the easiest ways to make passive income. You see a lot of stuff on social media, people telling you to, real estate hack, buy a property with, 4 units, live in 1, rent the other 3 out. And, that's cool for your lifestyle if you want. But I always just say, get the first one. Get the first one because once you have the first property that's cash flowing, and that actually, let me backtrack a second to make this a little bit more understandable. When you're trying to get a loan for a house, right? They look at all your assets, liabilities, cash flow, income, and stuff like that, and they decide how much money you can afford to spend per month, right? And that's how you figure out what your loan pre-approval is. Now, if you own a property and you rent it out, that liability now comes off your books because you're making the money back, and even maybe some profit on that. So the fact is, what I tell people is they worry about, like, oh, if I buy this one property, like I won't be able to afford another one. Like I feel like I'll only be able to get one. And what about my own place? Once you get an investment property and you rent it out and you're making cash flow on that, I'm not going to say it's easy to get the second or third one, but it's not as difficult as you think. And that's especially true if you have a good lender that's working with you. So I always say it's all about just getting the first one, whether it's a condo, townhome, single family residence if you can afford it, but just getting that first one cash flowing, learning the business, figuring out how it is to be a landlord, figuring out how it is to deal with repairs, insurance, and all that kind of stuff. That will set you up to either know that this is for you and you can continue doing it, or maybe it's not for you, but it's always just about getting that first property.
I can agree more, man. I mean, this is the advice that I give to, my team and people that I speak to about investing. It's the first one is always the hardest in anything, but especially in houses. I remember, I bought my first house in 2019. It was a rental for my family. And I was so scared of that first purchase for whatever reason. I could have bought a house 2 years before that. I had the credit, I had the income, I had all that. But because of the fear of the unknown and overthinking, like, can I really afford a house, all the expenses, all these things, I waited, a couple of years and then finally pulled the trigger. But after you go through the process of escrow and dealing with the lender and, seeing how the earnest money gets paid back and just going through the process, just like anything else, you realize it's pretty easy and you actually get more excited to get the next one.
Yeah.
For me, after I got that first one and I saw the potential, and obviously, the market's not always going to, appreciate as much as it did over the last 3 years. And, there's a lot of different factors, but I think just the aspect of almost playing Monopoly in a sense excites me, because we all know that, most millionaires, multimillionaires, decamillionaires are made from real estate, yet most people aren't taking effort to at least learn about the process and, figure out what they need to do to get into the house.
Well, honestly, I don't blame most people for being scared of real estate, because if you think about our generation, just growing up with the Great Recession and, seeing our parents, a lot of people lose their homes and whatnot, and seeing home values be halved in a couple of years, it is scary. It is scary. But when you really start to learn and understand about it, and that's part of what I try to do with the content on my channel, is I try to explain, like, why was the market so crazy the last few years? Like, did this just happen? How did this happen? Like, what led up to the 2008 recession that caused, the 2010s to be the way that they were, that led to us having this? Like, once you understand that, then you can kind of protect yourself and insulate yourself, so you're not buying at ridiculous prices and you're not over leveraging yourself. You got to know exactly why it got screwed up, so you don't make those same mistakes. But again, I do understand why people are hesitant, but again, that first property, once you learn it, it's also not just about buying the real estate and, being an investor. It's about learning the process, so then you can replicate it.
Totally. What advice would you give to people looking to get their first property? Would you recommend starting with a primary, living there for a couple of years to get a lower down payment, and then moving to another one and doing the rental route that way? Would you recommend going straight for a duplex, fourplex? What advice would you get for people wanting to get on the investment side?
I think it depends on your finances. There's a couple things to think about here. First of all, when you buy a home that's intended to be an investment property, the interest rate's a little bit higher because there's more inherent risk there, right? You're not living there, so there's a higher chance in the bank's mind or the lender's mind that you'll let that property go if things got bad. I've spoken to people that say that it doesn't make any sense to buy your own place until you have a couple rental properties that are cash flowing and getting a loan based off that. I've seen other people that say you should get your own place, spruce it up, then rent it out, and then, do the hacking thing and moving on. I really just think it depends on what you can afford. If you're in the situation where you can afford to rent a place and put all the rest of your money into, buying a fourplex and, cash flowing with that, and then using that money to then get a loan and get a bigger house and just stacking that's one thing. But most people are in the situation where they're going to buy their own place. It's going to cash flow. Not going to cash flow. It's going to appreciate a little bit, and then they'll get to a point where they can rent it out and move to the next one. So I know that's not a direct answer, but it really just depends on what you're working with in the bank.
How do you think real estate stacks up as an investment class versus other stuff like stocks, crypto, gold, silver, etc.
Oh, it's the best one. I mean, they're not making any more real estate, right? Obviously, they're making more houses, but they're not making any more land, right? And the thing is that over time, I mean, just like the stock market, but even more over time, housing always goes back up. Always goes back up. I always tell people this that are worried about, buying a house and it might, I guess, depreciate in value, 1, 5, 10% in the next year or two. I always say, if your goal is to sell the house in that time, then yeah, you shouldn't buy. But if your goal is to sell the house in 5, 7, 10 years and you're worried about making a profit, well, you're going to make one. The question is just how much, you know what I mean? Like over time, things will always rebound.
No, totally, man. I think the only way you lose money in real estate if you're over leveraged and have to sell in a bad position.
Exactly.
As long as you're in a position to hold long enough to, deal with the ups and downs of the market, you'll always come out on top.
Well, part of it always also though is that you have to be making smart decisions when you finally do make those decisions. And part of that is choosing a real estate agent, being educated by yourself, in real estate, because I know a lot of people that made mistakes because they work off of bad advice because they don't know a lot about real estate themselves and they take advice from the wrong people, or, they just like, I've been out of this so long, I just need to jump in, right? You know what I mean? And you jump in at the wrong time. That's why you need good trusted advisors, and you need to consume content that's actually informing you, not just entertaining you.
Yeah. No, I think there's so much content out there right now with real estate, and it's such a hot topic that there's definitely some misinformation out there. And, I agree. I mean, one of the cool things about, real estate agents and lenders is, especially on the buyer side, they don't charge you anything. Someone could reach out to you or any realtor, any lender, and just learn information, learn about the process. And obviously it's benefit for you because the hope is eventually they, buy a house down the road. But there's so many resources and free information out there. It's just all about getting educated so you can make those right decisions. Preparation plus opportunity equals success.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's one of the number one questions that I get is, what does it cost to use your services, especially if you're buying? It doesn't really cost anything. You're not supposed to say that there's no cost to the client, because technically the way that it works is if you're a buyer and you use a buyer's agent, the buyer's agent gets paid a commission out of the proceeds of the sale from the seller side. So essentially the buyer is not directly paying you, but because of their participation, you're getting paid out, so indirectly. But a lot of people are worried or kind of a little apprehensive speaking to realtors, asking them questions prior, because they're worried that once they open up that dialogue, essentially the sale of the transaction started. And it's not like that at all. A lot of my realtor buddies and I, we laugh about it because we say our ideal client is somebody that comes to us a year before they're ready to do anything and says, hey, in summer 2023 or winter 2023, I plan on buying a house or selling a house. Like, how do I prepare for that? Because once you have that amount of time, you can get, you can prepare the house correctly, prepare their finances correctly, like really have a long view of the market so you can jump in at the right time. A lot of people that make impulsive decisions make bad decisions. But they're worried to speak to an agent because they're worried once they start that convo, they're going to be forced to do something. And it's not like that at all.
Totally. Let's talk about interest rates a little bit, because obviously the current landscape of the economy, the United States, interest rate, everything's a little bit out of whack right now. Yeah. Stock market's 20 to 40% down. Crypto's a bazillion percent down. It feels like everything is just on the way down. Other than real estate, at least in Las Vegas, it seems like it's slowly declining, but it seems like it's been able to, weather the storm up until this point. What do you think is more important, Gershon, when it comes to, buying a home or an investment property? Is it price? Is it interest rate? Is it trying to get the best of both worlds?
It is trying to get the best of both worlds. So one thing that people should realize is that right now interest rates are at like 20-something year high. I forgot what the specific amount of time is, but it hasn't been like this for a very long time. And the reason obviously is because the Fed is trying to crush inflation by crushing demand. Right? They can't. This whole inflation thing was started because of COVID, and there was a supply side issue with getting things from other countries and just everything shutting down, and it reverberated with every part of our economy. And now, because we can't impact the supply side, we have to impact the demand side to bring inflation down. So they're raising rates so aggressively that it's basically killing the demand for the real estate market in a lot of places. So if you're looking to buy, right, one thing that I always say is it has to be price and interest rate, because when most people are shopping for a house, what are they thinking about? They're not just thinking about, oh, this is a $500,000 house. They're looking, well, how much money per month am I going to have to pay? And the interest rate is what determines that. I'll give you an example. If you took a $500,000 house at 3%, right? The monthly payment, I think, and don't quote me on this, and people are going to come and say PMI, this and that, but the basic payment for a 3% rate, $500,000 mortgage is right around like $2,000 or $2,100 a month. If you take the same $500,000 mortgage and you make it now a 5% payment, you're at like $2,600 or $2,700. So just 2% increase, and now we're literally increased $600 or $700. And we were at a 3% rate on average in like, January 2022, February 2022, like 6.5% or 7%, right? So the same house for $500,000 that was costing you $2,100 now is costing you like, I don't know, $3,500. It's crazy. So another thing is, because of that, obviously prices are starting to come down, like you say. So some people are like, oh, well, if the prices are coming down 10, 15%, is it the time to jump in, even though the rates are so high, my payment's so high? Well, here's a problem. Let's say you buy a house right now and you still think that the market's going to go down another 5, 10, 15% in the next couple of years. And in your mind, you're like, well, it's okay if I buy at 7%. I can just refinance later, right? Well, what happens if you buy at a 7% rate and the price you buy the house at, it goes down, I don't know, 10, 15, 20% in the next year or two? I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just giving an example. The problem is that now you're, let's say, in negative equity, and if the rates come down, you can't refinance, or it's very expensive too. So buying a house is a combination, like I'm saying, of making sure that the price is right and the rate is right. Because if you buy, let's say, because there's no other competition in the market like there is now, but the rates are really high, you might get screwed and you might not be able to refinance. So you got to make sure you're getting it at a price that's low enough that you can absorb whatever the market's going to hit you at when the prices come down. So that's something that some people forget. You hear all the time, like, date the rate, you know what I mean? Like, but it's not like that. The true thing about it is that you need to make sure that you have enough cushion in there that if rates stay like this for a while and prices come down because of it, that you're still able to refinance when the rates do come down.
Man, that's really important, because I was one of those guys too. It's like, oh, interest rate doesn't matter as much as long as you can, float the payment for X, Y, and Z. Then you always have the opportunity to refinance. Right. I never thought, though, what happens if the market turns and you end up going underwater on this property? Yeah. You can't refinance and you're kind of stuck. That's a very interesting point that people definitely need to take into consideration. So what do people do? Do they wait until they have enough money, or maybe more than that they expected, to be able to afford a higher house? Do they outlast and hopefully rates start kind of going back down? Like what do people do in this type of climate?
So essentially, if you're able to buy right now, you want to buy. What I'm doing with a lot of my buyers is you're making lower ball offers. I'm not talking about 30, 40% under, but you got to be able to progress or forecast forward and see, hey, do I think the market's going to be at this level in a year or two? No, I think it might be 5 or 10% below. So my offer has to be there so I can absorb it. So number one thing is making those lower ball offers and securing enough equity that could absorb the shock of the market. And then otherwise, it's preparing yourself for a time when you think that rates are going to come down. I'm in the mindset that rates are going to come down, I would say, by the end of next year. I think that first of all, the government has a lot of debt, and it can't service all that debt at this interest rate that we're at, and it's going to go higher too. They're just talking about raising it again. So I don't think that we're going to keep it this high for that long. And I also think that we're already seeing the signs of inflation going down. I think that we're talking a big game, as the Federal Reserve is, because it needs to kind of scare the market into chilling out. But you either have to make a lower ball offer, or you have to prepare yourself for when they actually drop rates, which in my opinion will be in about a year.
No, that's very interesting. On the other side of the coin, if you're an investor in this time, you're actually in a pretty good position.
Oh, yeah. If you have cash right now, an unbelievable time right now. I've seen some crazy deals on the sold deals list. Like every single agent has access to the MLS, and you can see the sold information for the last few days, last few weeks, or whatever it is, through our system. And you can see what they listed the house for a lot of places. You can also see what they took for it. And I've seen certain deals $475 and they got it for $388. It doesn't happen all the time. You're talking about some people that are probably were desperate to sell and had to get out of it, but almost all of those deals show cash on the bottom. So if you're an investor right now and you're working with cash and you have the manpower and the will to find those deals, it's a very good time to buy.
Cash is king. And even, if you're holding on to a property because, in an inflationary environment, real estate does really well because it forces people maybe out of purchasing a home, and everyone needs a place to live. So it increases rents.
Yeah.
From the landlord perspective, that's actually really good because your payment is fixed, whatever interest rate you got locked in when you originally got the home, yet more people are having to rent. Therefore you have more demand. Therefore you can charge more rent.
Right. Yeah. Rents were actually going up until, I want to say, a few months ago. And that was the byproduct of them raising rates. It was like everyone that was looking for a house was like, I can't afford this payment now, so I'm going to have to rent. And because of that, rents were going up, but it started to chill out now, and things are starting to kind of level out. It's also the time of the year we're in. The winter time has less transactions and whatnot, but that's definitely true.
Yeah. Where do you foresee the market in the next year, Gershon? Does it have to do a lot on interest rates? Will that determine kind of where prices go, or is Vegas so secure because of everything going on here that we're in a good spot regardless?
So I think it's a lot to do with interest rates, because the inventory of homes is still low. I mean, if we think about what caused this crazy run up in 2020, 2021, it was a combination of two things. Number one, they dropped interest rates from like I think it was 4 or 5% to 3% because they wanted to stimulate the market at the beginning of COVID and make sure that we didn't go into like a depression. And then that combined with the fact that nationwide, we've had a lack of inventory of homes for the last 10 years. So I'll tell you how this happened, because this is actually pretty interesting. So everybody knows what happened in the Great Recession in 2008. There was a ridiculous amount of homes for sale. There was a ridiculous amount of subprime mortgages that got caught. The whole market tanked. And part of the reason that happened was because in the decade before that, we had this whole thing in America, which was like, everyone deserves to be a homeowner, right? So they were really, really pushing it. They made the terms for getting a mortgage really lax, right? And that's part of what led to this whole domino thing, was that there were certain places you could go and you can get a ninja loan, which is no income, no job, right? And
the Big Short, right?
Yeah, Big Short, exactly. I mean, I know a good buddy of ours who was telling me that when he used to do mortgages back in New York back in the day, they used to make business cards for people that didn't have a job to qualify them, right? And this was like a normal thing. This wasn't like this company was inherently bad. It was just done, and everyone did it, and it was normal because, hey, like, houses always go up in value, so it's fine, right? So after 2008 hit and we had all these homes in foreclosure, right, there was such a glut of inventory that builders were like, well, we're not going to build more houses now. We're going to slow down what we're building. We need to work through this backlog of foreclosures and homes. And it took years for that to happen. And the byproduct of that was, like I said, builders started slowing down. They weren't building as much. And then all the subcontractors that these builders employed were out of jobs. So all these guys that were, stucco, tile, roofers, you know what I mean? That whole industry, all those industries, the numbers of employees that those people had dwindled, and they took jobs elsewhere. So for the whole decade of 2010, let's say till 2020, we'll call it, the number of homes in the U.S. that were built, I think, was around like 5 to 7 million homes. In the decades before that, it was like 20 million homes, 20 to 30. And if you think about it, our population is steadily increasing, right? So we got to finally, like in 2017, we finally got to this point where we hit a critical mass, where like we worked through all the backlog, and now we were starting to see that there was not enough homes for all of the people that wanted to buy. All the millennials coming of age, all the people that wanted to upgrade, they were finally done with all the financial problems that the previous recession hit them with. And in 2017, we had a little mini run of home prices increase, and it chilled a little bit. But then once we got to 2020 and they dropped the rates, it was just like match, gasoline, boom. And that's what you saw, was everyone could afford to buy a house for a cheap price now, because, at a 3% rate, a $300,000, $400,000 house is not that expensive. And there just wasn't that many homes available. So, all of a sudden now you have 20 offers on a home, people paying, $450,000 for a $375,000 home. Like, that's how you get to that climate. It doesn't just start because of low rates or, pandemic relief money. It's literally a pot brewing for over 10 years based upon 2008, and then now combined with our interest rate just made it explode.
That's so interesting. Do you think we're going to get to the point with the way things are going with inflation and, rising costs, that our generation, the millennials, will get priced out of purchasing a home?
It's already happening. A lot of times you'll see people that have to use their parents to purchase a house. I mean, if you have that kind of generational wealth, it's great, but they'll need to get the down payment from their parents or have their parents co-sign. It's already happening, but I will say one thing that I worry about too also is eventually the baby boomer generation is going to die out. and they own a lot of real estate. And the question is, and no one really knows the answer to this, but there's a lot of doomsday people that say, like, once the baby boomers are not here in droves and all their heirs have these homes that they don't need, they're going to sell them and it's going to bring the market down significantly. But I mean, who really knows? The one thing I'll say is that if somebody tells you definitively they know what's going to happen in real estate, you need to run. They're bullshitting you. There's nobody truly knows. You can forecast well. You can look at history. You can look at the numbers and you know, protect yourself. But truthfully, like, nobody knows. And I'll tell you why this is true from personal experience. I remember when the pandemic hit, it was madness. Everybody was canceling contracts. Nobody could sell a home. I remember from March 2020 until like June 2020, I didn't know. A majority of agents I knew were not closing anything. Everyone's like, this is it. The real estate market's going to crash. It's going to crash. Everybody was sure it's going to crash. And what happens? Literally the end of summer 2020, the craziest real estate run we've seen for the last 2 years.
It's crazy, man. Yeah, no one has a crystal ball. You know, there's experts and, you know, everyone's trying to sell something, whether it's a course or something, but no one really knows what's going to happen. That's why you need certain principles that regardless whether it's an up market or a down market, you can stand by to make sure that you're congruent regardless of the swings of the market.
100%. So true.
Let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about TikTok and social media, man. I think, you know, it's been really cool to see your progression when it's come to, you know, just monetizing social media to help, you know, build your real estate empire. What's some tricks, some tips, some TikTok game, because you have on multiple posts over 1 million, you know, views. What's some things that you can share that help people trying to get going on social media and TikTok that'll help their business?
Definitely. So the number one tip I tell people, the whole secret to TikTok is watch time. It's all about retention, right? It's eyeballs on the screen. That's what all the apps are trying to do. You know, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they're all in a battle for your attention. So the way that the TikTok algorithm works is if you can keep people on your screen longer, especially longer than what your video is, then it will push out your content quicker into more people. So it took me a while to learn that, because at the beginning I used to do these longer videos that were, you know, didn't have the right pacing or weren't hitting the point, and you just lose people right away. And then I realized that you need to, you know, have a better hook. You need to have things quicker, choppier. You need to make sure that they can watch your video longer than what your video is, which means that if you produce a 10-second video, you want them watching your video on a loop for, you know, 10, 15, 20 seconds. So my number one tip is going to be that when you're creating your content, is it rewatchable? Are you having people stay there for, you know, can they get the main idea of your video in the first 3 seconds and be done? Or do they need to watch the whole thing to get the value? Because if you can keep them there the whole time, you're going to be successful no matter what.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you do really well, definitely digestible content, but you throw comedy in there, you throw creativity, you know, it seems like you're very intentional with your post. I feel like on a platform like TikTok, it's just, you can't be as cookie cutter as maybe like other platforms in the past. Are there certain approaches that you need to take in terms of the actual language of the content in order to be successful on there?
I guess the number one approach I would say is it needs to be like the beginning has to be very, very, you know, engaging. Like you always hear the hook is the most important thing in any sort of short, and especially with TikTok. TikTok exponentially over time gets more difficult because there's so many people on the platform. I remember when I first was shooting videos, I mean, I could just shoot a basic video and it would get, you know, 2,000 views. That same video now would probably get 100 views. And that's not because the quality of the videos are changing. It's because, you know, the app has to adapt for the number of people, the number of videos on there. So the number one approach, I'm saying your hook has to be amazing. And also for short form videos, I always say the shorter the better. Try to keep it under 30 seconds. I'm long-winded though, so it's hard for me sometimes, but
yeah, totally. No, I mean, you've been killing it, man. In today's age, do you think whether you're a realtor, a salesperson, a small business owner, that it is a necessity, not so much a luxury anymore, to be on social media in order to compete?
100%. And I'm not gonna lie, I used to think that I was like, why do I need to be on social media? I don't even like Instagram. I'll be sure. I don't even like Instagram. I think, you know, Facebook too, I really don't care for it. I always tell my wife that, like, if I wasn't in real estate, I would just have like a lurker page. You know what I mean? I wouldn't post anything. I would just be on there to, you know, see my family, my friends, see what they're doing. But nowadays it's, like you said, it's a necessity because you need to show people, right? You need to show people kind of what you're about without, you know, them meeting you. That's how you can get clientele, you know, the best way without having to be face to face. And this is stuff that lives on, right? You don't have to be present all the time. It's almost like passive income on the internet. right? These videos and things like that. So being able to speak about the things you want, talk about your values, mission, all that kind of stuff, show your knowledge in the space to demonstrate value. That's what social media does. And now more than ever, I think it's so important.
Totally, man. I was super against just the whole personal brand and, just the whole virtual game, because it's just so played out and there's so much bad content and information and people doing it wrong, that I was just like, I'm going to go crush it in real life and just go do what I need to do in terms of my own business, and then get so successful that I don't even need social media. And then I studied, I started looking at people like Ed Mylett, Grant Cardone, all these super successful business people that would never have to log onto an Instagram page and still be worth $500 million, but they're spending so much of their time and energy and resources developing content and creating brand. And I just, came to the conclusion, it's like, man, if you can't beat them, you got to join them.
Yeah. And honestly, you're a great example of that. The reason that your content is great is because just knowing you and obviously seeing the things like what you've done, like it's proven already. It's not something where it's like, hey, this is just like a try hard or wannabe. Like, you're coming from success already and doing this stuff. So your content hits even more. You know what I mean? There's, like you said, there's a lot of people, a lot of bad content on there that are trying to make their success from the content, but your content is basically reinforcing your success already.
Totally. And I think that's a really good point for those of you guys out there listening, whether it's creating content or trying to create a brand. It's like, go do something of note first. Go accomplish something in terms of your life, because there's so many people out there that are sharing their tips and tricks and secrets to success that haven't actually accomplished anything. So step number one, go crush it in real life, whether it's a business, whether it's a profession, whether it's, sales or real estate or Forex or whatever, your main vehicle is that you're accomplishing, and then monetize and then document, not the other way around, because people can feel that. If Gershon was putting out all this content, but he wasn't actually living it, he wasn't actually, practicing what he preaches, his content wouldn't do as good as it does, because that level of authenticity is not there and it doesn't hit and land the same way. So I think that's a really good nugget. Gershon, you've been doing sales and entrepreneurship for a really long time. I feel like ever since I've known you, in high school and, got to know you a lot more, obviously, in college, I've always looked at you as someone who is very sharp and has the ability to communicate well. I remember when I was coming up in entrepreneurship, I always used to look at you like, Gershon's the closer. I just need to get this guy and he can close everyone. What do you think? Where have you learned those skill sets, or how have they evolved? Like, what do you think have been some lessons in communication that you feel like have gotten you to where you are today?
That's a really good question. I would say, so I did debate in high school, and that got me over my fear of public speaking. I went to Meadows, actually, here in Vegas. They have a very, very good debate department. They used to go to national champion. I wasn't a national champion. I wasn't good compared to what they had. But the training I got there really, really helped me with my public speaking. And I think that's part of it, with sales especially, is that if you can, go off the cuff and talk genuinely with people, then they'll really connect with you, and you'll be able to go farther. Aside from that, I'll say it's really just practice. When I was in college, my first job in college, funny enough, I answered this Craigslist ad. It was 2009, so there was like no jobs out there at all. And I needed a part-time job, UNLV, the fraternity. I really wanted beer money. So I answered this ad for this consulting company. It was called Advantage Consulting, I remember. And they didn't really explain what the job was on the ad, but it was like $10 an hour. It sounded great. It was close to where I lived. So I went to the interview and I found out what they did. They did tele-fundraising. So fraternities, hospitals, organizations that have, membership or whatever, they will contract a company like this and then send them all of their alumni or past clients or whatever it was. And we as a call center would call these people and literally try to convince them to give money to the organization for nothing in return, just donations. And this is like the hardest sell ever. If you think it's 2009, the economy is going down the toilet. People are hanging up left and right. Like, I can't believe you're calling me for this. Like, what? Like, I just lost my house. I'm like, okay, I'll talk to you later. Maybe I'll call back next week. And that was like 6 months of boot camp on the phones. And that really that sent me in a place where I could be on the phone or talk to somebody, and it wasn't like a thing if they didn't want to work with me, because I didn't internalize it anymore. And then after that, I started working with my cousin at the business consulting firm, and that was like 7 years on the phone with clients, and it's just compounding interest, right? I made a lot of mistakes in the past. I remember the way I used to be on the phone or with clients, and you make those mistakes and you learn from them, right? What's my favorite saying? It's good choices, or good choices come from experience, and experience comes from bad choices. So you got to screw up sometimes to become good.
Totally. And I think that's really important for people. It's like you look at people that are crushing it in specific industries, and it's very easy to write that off on like, oh man, they're just really good, or he's just a great speaker, man, he's got a good book of business, or, man, he just got lucky off those TikTok videos, or whatever the case is. But people don't see the thousands and thousands of hours of failure and practice and work. I actually didn't know that about you. I didn't know that you spent, so much time on the phone, getting rejected, working on your pitch, working on your tonality. But it totally makes sense on why you've been able to catapult your career in another person-to-person business.
Oh, 100%. Success is an iceberg. I mean, it's really what it is. You only see the success, which is the 10% up top. You don't see the 90% underneath, that's, the rejection, the stress, the doubt. I mean, I remember I shot this video earlier this year, and it did really, really well on TikTok. And it was basically like, I always laugh when people say that realtors are paid too much, right? I wanted to be a little bit controversial, get a conversation going. And my explanation is that the reason that there's a lot of hate online for like real estate agents, realtors, people in sales is because you only see us saying, hey, I closed this house for $500,000 and there's like a $10,000 commission on it. That's all you see. So to you, it's like, oh, I could do that. Like, that's not hard. He just signed some paperwork. He opened a door. Like he showed them where the bedroom was. Like that's so easy. I could do it, right? But that's literally 1% of it. You know what I mean? The prospecting, the time, figuring out exactly how you're gonna find clients, taking them out, negotiating, dealing with them. I mean, a lot of being a salesperson, you're babysitting a lot. You're dealing with people's insecurities. You're dealing with people's worries. I've had times where I've been on the phone with a client like 2.5 hours, 10 p.m. at night. And they're worried they're not going to get something accepted, or they're worried the house isn't going to close. And you got to talk to them. You got to work them through it. You got to be there for them. You know what I mean? So I would say that, like I said, success is an iceberg. There's so much more underneath that creates that 10%. And I think people in sales just get a lot of hate because, you only see that good part.
No, I couldn't agree more, man. How much of your success do you dictate to your own emotional intelligence and being able to control your emotions in, certain situations in real estate?
I think it's a lot of it. There's a lot of times in real estate you can take things personally, get down on yourself because there's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of, tough moments. I mean, there's a lot of times where you think you're going to get a deal and it falls through. There's a lot of times where, you can see the finish line and a deal collapses. Like I literally just had this happen a few weeks ago where a guy I've been working with for like a year and a half that was going to move from the East Coast. And I was doing because he wasn't here, I was doing all the work for him, meaning I was going to these houses, I was taking video tours, I was doing analysis for him of these houses in these neighborhoods, sending it to him, figuring it out. And I didn't care that I was working for him for so many months because I knew at the end that there would be a sale and it would happen. And we finally got into escrow. And everything was working perfectly. He was finally going to move here. And then his daughter talked to him about the market and convinced him for this specific situation, even though we were getting the house at a very good price, in my opinion, that it just wasn't the right time. And he canceled. And I could have freaked out. I could have, went nuts. I could have been like, I've been working with you for 18 months. How many hours have I put in this and that? I said, you know what? I respect family. I understand. I think if you want to come back next summer and look again, that's totally fine. And he respected so much, and he even sent me a client after that.
And I think what you just said right there, whether it's in real estate or any profession, is the difference between an amateur and a professional. Yeah. It's very easy for anyone after something like that happen or a big sale falling through that is totally out of their control for them to blame and woe me and go victim and, just deflect personal ownership. But to take ownership of that and be like, man, I did the best I could. But as long as I continue to treat this guy with integrity, not change it up, continue to stay on my horse and continue to push, good things will happen. And I'm sure they will from that.
Oh, definitely. And it's really understanding that this is going to happen naturally in the sales process. I mean, you're never going to have a 100% close rate. Have you heard of that 10-3-1? Have you ever heard that before? Mm-mm. Like you talk to 10 people, you get 3 people in contract, 1 closes, right? There's ratios for every single type of industry, but like especially in real estate, you gotta talk to a lot of people, and you gotta know that eventually, I mean, you're going to be working with somebody for a long time and it's just not going to work out. And all those hours you put in, those, 50, 60, 100 hours of time over a year's time, it could just go down. You don't get paid for it at all. And you got to be okay with it, because there's other times where somebody calls you out of the blue and says, hey, I just got to town. My buddy gave me your number. I have $1 million cash. I need to buy a house. And it's like, okay. He's like, I just found this on Zillow. Can we go see it? Yeah. Go see it. Can I put an offer in? Sure. And that's it. And, it balances out. And you got to know that there's two sides to it. And that for all the tough deals and all the bullshit you got to deal with, there's going to be the easy ones and the ones in the middle. And that if you have a long view of it, it'll balance out and benefit you.
No, totally, man. Why do you think most people, whether it's sales professionals or anyone trying to accomplish something that is a little bit more unorthodox, why do you think they lack that depth of vision?
I think that because they have a short-term view of things. People are just looking about how they're going to make money, tomorrow, next month. I mean, I'm not to say that I haven't done that myself. When I first started real estate, I was like, I really want this first deal. I really want that first deal. It's you want to pop your cherry as a realtor, right? Then when you get your license and everyone knows you're getting your license, the funny thing is everybody always asks you, have you sold a house yet? Right? And for the first month, you're like, no, I haven't. I'm trying. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, come on, please. Like, and once it finally happens, but eventually I got to the point where I was like, okay, if a person that talks to me and they say they're trying to buy a house or sell a house and it doesn't work out because they want to wait, that's fine. Because that's a deal for next year, right? I'm building a pipeline. You know what I mean? As long as I know that it's eventually going to happen and I'm building towards that, that's fine. Like I have a view, years out. But I think a lot of people are like, how am I going to make money this year, tomorrow? And, it comes, and thinking about that too much, it translates to your actions and the way you speak and your tonality. And there's a term in all sales, right? Commission breath. You don't want to come across like that, but it happens because you're still a person. You have bills, you have things you want to do, right? And you want to make it happen. And a lot of times it doesn't happen at your own pace that you want it to happen in. But if you take a longer view and realize that, the average time from lead to close in real estate is more than a year for a lot of people. Once you realize that, then the people that fall through or don't happen now, it's fine because it'll happen eventually. All you got to do is keep pushing.
Yeah, I would agree, man. I think it's all about having that business owner mentality. It's the same thing in my business. My turnaround isn't as long as real estate, but to really get someone going, some new sales rep that comes in, it could take a couple months to really start seeing any type of decent income to survive. And what I always tell people, you have to have that business mentality.
Yes.
It's not like you're going to get a normal 9 to 5, or if you work a month, you're going to guarantee pay based on the time you show up. It's not about time, just like in any sales opportunity. It's about the value that you can put in the time. And I feel like a lot of people, if they came in with a business mindset, almost as if they just invested $1 million into, a McDonald's, for example, they know that it's going to take time. And then that McDonald's will eventually spit some type of ROI, a year, 2 years, 3 years. But there needs to be some things that happen first in order to make that business profitable. It's the same thing in any sales job, any type of business, because you have to develop yourself. You have to build the character, the confidence. You have to go through the trials and tribulations. But yet most people don't treat it as such because I feel like there's not a big investment they're making. So they don't have as much skin in the game to really allow it to pay off long term.
That's very true. Honestly, man, I would pay good money to see a blooper reel of when your new employees go out to do door knocking for the first time.
It's rough.
I honestly think that would be hilarious because I'm sure it's unnerving. Like, oh my God, I'm going to knock on this person's door and try to get them to spend money and literally work with me. They've never met me before. I've never done this. It's got to be crazy.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing I've ever done for sure. But, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done because I think in life you have to go after doing hard things, quitting your, 8-year career in finance and pivoting over to a brand new 100% commission real estate industry is scary and it's challenging. And there's going to be a lot of resistance, but the reward from that completely outweighs it. It's the same thing with door knocking. I remember when I first started, 8 years ago now, it was the scariest thing. I'm naturally an introvert. It was just almost like talking to a girl for the first time and asking them out, but for the first 100 doors, doing that consistently in a day. And it's just so interesting looking back because that season of my life literally defined me and helped solidify my new identity and who I am today because of how challenging and how much resistance was there. Overcoming that allowed me to tap into someone who I didn't know existed at that time.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's actually a really good way to put it. It's almost like your boot camp that turned you into like a general. You know what I mean? You're just like strong and able to withstand whatever sales could throw at you.
I feel like, any type of sales job, especially 100% commission, will really test your will and see how committed you are into, accomplishing what you said you're going to.
Oh yeah. There's going to be one thing I always say is that what you're going to see in the next year or so, there's going to be a lot of real estate agents that are about to drop out. I think there was a stat that we added a couple 100,000 in the last 2 years, which is a crazy number. There's way too many agents right now. If you're hustling and doing it right, more power to you. I respect the hustle from other agents. I love when I see it, but I will be the first to say that there are too many agents out there right now. And I get why. It was an easy job to do during the pandemic, but you're going to see a lot of agents looking for new jobs soon.
No, I bet, man. I feel like it's such an easy thing to do. Oh, I could sell a couple of houses. I know a buddy that has a house, but to actually turn it into a career and not do it part-time is probably pretty tough.
Yeah. Well, what a lot of agents say is that it's very easy to become an agent. It's very difficult to stay an agent.
I like that. I like that a lot. Do you think everyone has the ability to be a salesperson, or you think it's only for a selected few?
I think anyone can be a salesperson. I mean, unless you have crippling anxiety dealing with people, but it's all about education in my mind. If you become very well versed about what you're trying to work with, whether it be solar, real estate, cars, this and that, that there's 4 types of power. The number one power is expert power, right? So if you can become an expert on something, then just your natural knowledge about a subject will be able to sell that thing for you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if you're passionate enough about, and you have enough emotional pull to anything, you can be successful at selling that. And I feel like it's not even the traditional sales. I talk about this a lot, but I feel like most people just think about the profession of selling as, a real estate agent or a door-to-door salesman or whatever. But everyone does some type of selling on a daily basis, whether it's your husband trying to sell your wife on where they should go for date night, or your father trying to sell the child on why they should get good grades in school and eat their broccoli every single night. There's always some type of negotiation. There's always some type of sales opportunity on a daily basis. Some people just aren't conscious of it. So your ability to get really good at influencing people and helping other people see your point of view, as long as it's ethically, in line with what you believe, I think pays dividends regardless if you're actually in the profession of sales or not.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Beautifully put.
Yeah. Gershon, let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about the fraternity, man, because, Jake was on another fraternity brother. He has his own podcast. He actually, one of the people that inspired me to doing this. I had my own experience in college. I wasn't there very long. As a lot of people know, I dropped out and did network marketing and, was a loserpreneur for a while until, I started getting some traction. But what do you think were some takeaways from the fraternity that you felt translated into real life?
The fraternity days, man, those were fun days. For the ones who can remember, they were great. College was a fun 5 years. I definitely went longer. That's how UNLV is, right? It's hard to finish in 4 years there, but especially when you're talking about the fraternity, one thing I always remember is that it really, really increased my interpersonal skills, because you have to work with people that are a lot of people that are just not like you, and specifically our fraternity, right? So to explain to people that are just listening or don't really know a little bit about our fraternity, Stephen and I were in API, which is the Jewish fraternity. So we rush guys that were Jewish, and because of that, it's a lot of different types of personalities. Other fraternities, the way that they do things, where they're not, based on, let's say, religion or whatnot, or the way that they go after their members is based on their religion, is they're looking for similar types of guys, right? Because you want to have, guys that are into sports or, this and that, whatever, similar types of guys. So a lot of them get along because they're looking for that type. In API, there was different cliques, right? There was, quote unquote, the nerds, the jocks, the party guys, just like, any other large group of friends or large group of people would have. So specifically our fraternity, it was really good because I was exposed to so many different types of personalities, opinions, and every Jew has 2 opinions, right? Or 5 opinions even, right? We're such opinionated people. It helped me just deal with people, problem solve better, work in groups better, and just operate, let's say, a mini business almost.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. It's funny because, back then, I think Greek life has a bad rep. It's like, oh, you have to pay for friends. And it's just so funny to see the evolution in today's age, where we live in the world now of, mastermind groups and, social media organizations. And literally I'm guilty. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars to join these groups and essentially pay for friends, to get myself in the right rooms and, get myself, in front of certain people because, you have to pay to play. And the fraternity reminds me a lot of that because essentially at its core, it's a bunch of like-minded individuals. In our case, we were all Jewish, but a bunch of like-minded individuals that have a common goal. And I think my biggest takeaway was just the ability to see culture at a high level. I think Greek life does it so well. Granted, the culture is wrapped around partying and girls and, other things, but in a sense, it's a culture of people all coming together, showing up at a certain spot to accomplish, a common goal or vision. And, I've learned so much from that experience that I took into my own life, in my own sales organization, in my own businesses, that's really helped me. One, like you said, navigate with other people from different walks of life and different personalities, but two, allow me to create a similar culture. Now it's wrapped around personal growth and money and finances and freedom, but similar vibes, man. And it's, it was a great experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Yeah.
Listen, there's a lot to be said for really successful, like office culture, that you can look at it and almost feel like it's, a fraternity sorority culture, right? Because there's like this camaraderie there. And you also have a central goal of working together on something. That's the way I always looked at it though. Was fraternity was like a trial run for life. Specifically, college was a trial run for life. The fraternity was almost like a trial run for business because you're working in groups and whatnot. And man, so true. Honestly, you can parlay the things you learn there into actual business. There's so much parallel. It's amazing.
Yeah, and you had an interesting role. You were the president at one point, which was super cool. I didn't care enough to take any roles. I wish I did back at the time, but I was at a different season of my life. What leadership qualities or lessons did you learn running the fraternity that you feel like have helped you in, real estate and ultimately your life right now?
That's a great question. I would say, so I was very strong-headed when I was, 18, 19 coming into the fraternity. And just the exposure to different opinions, and I was an only child, so I almost always thought that what I thought was right. Let's be honest. And then working with other people, seeing it the way they do things, really helped me realize that hey, you should really take stock into other people's opinions, look at their experiences, take value from it, and then come to a decision based on that. One thing I will say specifically about just being president, vice president, pledge master, all that kind of stuff was everything I learned year over year, it was just compounding, like I said. And by the time I was in the final year, I couldn't believe how much I had changed as a person just from, taking a role, leading these people. I would say right now it was the most beneficial point in my life. That the person I was coming into college and leaving college was two vastly different people. And I have the leadership roles that I took in API to thank for that, I think.
Yeah, no, totally, man. I wish I took a bigger role because I feel like, to your point, I think really college or almost any season of your life, you can almost use that to create the new season of your life. I tell people in my business, it's like, hey, this is a reflection of your next 5-10 years. How you show up in today is typically how you're going to show up in other things in your life. And you want to treat these certain seasons of your life really seriously and try and, pull as much out of it as possible, because you're going to use those life lessons in really anything that you do. And, the fraternity was definitely a fond experience for me as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, like for real life examples of things that we did that I think helped, you would think it's all just partying in a fraternity because that's what you see in movies, but we're doing things like budgeting, planning huge events, right? Like we used to do formals and, different, that was a whole thing where you had to coordinate a whole weekend for 100 people at a hotel, you know what I mean? With 6 meals and, transportation and, all this kind of stuff that was, very, very important that people were paying for. So learning how to put on large events, deal with, like I said, deal with different groups of people and whatnot. It was so beneficial.
No, totally, man. Gersh, my last question for you, man. Knowing everything that you know today, the Gershon who is TikTok famous and crushing it at your brokerage and just, an awesome husband, and then just crushing it at life, knowing everything that you know today, what would you tell yourself in college if you could give yourself your best advice to help fast track your success route?
Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. Buy it and then sell it before 2022.
No, I would say the one thing I would say is that you have to plant trees for the next generation. Have you ever heard that before?
Yes, I've heard that quote.
So the whole point of it is that like the payoff for the work that you're going to do is not going to be tomorrow, next week, next month, but you got to know, just like a tree, it's eventually going to grow and you'll be able to, see its beauty, harvest or whatever else. And that was something that I really lacked early on in my life. I was more so impulsive, wanted things now, just like any other teenage kid growing up or whatever. I would tell myself that like compounding interest is a real thing. Every 1% change you make every single day grows on itself. And before you know it, you know what I mean? You're thousands of percentage points exponentially better than you were before. So just telling my younger self that and knowing that, the little work each day accumulates would have been awesome to hear. I had to learn it through trial and error, obviously, but that's what I would tell my younger self.
Compound interest, man. Love that. Gersh, where could the viewers find you?
I'm on TikTok, Instagram, and now YouTube. I'm going to start pushing some longer form content. I want to do like a kind of like a real estate for dummies, real estate for beginners type courses. So people that don't really know what's going on with real estate, maybe they want to buy a house, sell a house in the future, and they don't know the terminology, know the process and whatever. I'm going to start pushing a lot of that stuff out. So I'm on all those platforms. My handle is at my first name Gershon, GERSHON.Vegas.
Awesome. Guys, definitely if you're just looking for a house or just interested in learning more about real estate, whether it's the investing side or a house for your own, definitely hit them up. We'll put all the links in the bio. And yeah, man, thank you so much.
Hey, this was great, man. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, guys. Till next time.